I want to welcome you tonight to Creative Conversations. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that here in Seattle, we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish people, both past and present. And we honor with gratitude both the Duwamish tribe and the land we are on. Of course, this is not meant to take the place of authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, but it is a first step in acknowledging the land that we're on. So thank you for joining me tonight. I'm really excited to have this conversation with my dear friend, Cheryl West. Cheryl is an award-winning playwright, well known to Seattle Rep audiences for plays like Shout, Sister, Shout, which was just on our stage this last fall, Pullman Porter Blues, Birdie Blue, and others, many others. Her home is in Seattle, but her plays are produced all around the country, including on Broadway and off Broadway in New York City, the Goodman Theater in Chicago, the Old Globe in San Diego, South Coast Rep, Minneapolis Children's Theater, Seattle Children's Theater, many, many other wonderful theaters around the country. She's also written for TV and for film, for Disney, Showtime, Paramount, and other major networks. She's always an in-demand writer, even during a pandemic. Cheryl has been working on multiple commission projects right now. She's one of the great playwrights of our time and one of my favorite human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Cheryl West. Cheryl?
Hello.
Hello.
Here we go. Hi, Braden.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you. Yeah.
Cheryl and I did check in right before this, and we both agreed that since it's cocktail hour, we would have ourselves a drink for this
conversation. To you.
Cheers to you, Cheryl, and all of you out there. I hope you're enjoying your evening. I'm also coming to you live from my daughter's bedroom because the lighting is better in here. So she grudgingly agreed to let me use her room as long as I didn't mess anything up or change anything around. So I'm going to do my best. I do have like some special guest hosts in case.
If I get a little boring, huh?
No, for me.
Okay.
It's a little weird drinking in my daughter's room, but I'm just going to go with it. So Cheryl, thanks for joining me tonight. So as I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, I was kind of thinking back. I mean, your history with Seattle Rep goes back a long ways. And I was thinking about when you and I first met, which I think was around the workshop of Rejoice. And I had just started at Seattle Rep. I had been on staff for maybe a year or two. This was like back in 2005. And I remember Chris Sumption, who's a dramaturg that you work with very regularly. Chris Sumption was my boss at the time. And I remember her saying to me, Cheryl doesn't suffer any fools. And I was I was very nervous.
Oh my goodness.
Because I remember going down to the rehearsal hall for Rejoice, and you were down there, of course, and Kenny Leon was directing. And I was very intimidated. I walked into the room and I don't think I said much. I probably tried to keep as quiet.
Probably not.
But
probably not.
I was just excited to be in the room with you both. But can you tell us about your history with the Rep? What was the first production that you did with the Rep?
It was a play called Holiday Heart.
Right.
And it was a three-way co-pro with Syracuse Stage and Cleveland Playhouse and Seattle Rep. And that was back in the day of Dan Sullivan and Doug Hughes. And they read it and said, okay, we're gonna do this. And Toswell Thompson directed it. And it was interesting. And it ended up, that play went to Manhattan Theater Club off Broadway, and then became a movie that De Niro's company bought for Showtime. So, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and it still is shown on BET quite often, and I get my check for, we won't say how much, but it wouldn't buy much groceries. but it still trends all the time.
Yeah. And is that when you kind of fell in love with Seattle and decided to move here?
No, actually, in 1987, I won a contest with the group theater when it was the Multicultural Playwrights Festival, and it actually launched my career. So I had this play called Before It Hits Home, which was my first major play, and they did a workshop. Tim Bond was a director, and that was in '87. And I came out here to do that workshop, and I was here about 3 or 4 weeks, and I just thought it was a beautiful city. I didn't know I was going to end up coming back here to live, but I really remember thinking, oh, the topography is so incredibly gorgeous. And I just really, really liked it here. That workshop was very difficult because it's the first time I'd gone through that process. And I remember calling my mother at midnight in a payphone in the alley saying, I'm not meant to be a writer. It was just very difficult. So fast forward, that play really put me on the map though.
Yeah.
So it ended up going to Arena, and then the Public and Second Stage produced it. And yeah, it was the first play about AIDS from a Black perspective. And it was in rehearsal at the Billie Holiday Theater in New York when the pandemic hit. So they were going to be doing a revival of it. Yeah.
Was that like one of the first major revivals of it?
Yes. Yes. I was so excited and pleased that they were doing that. And it was, that play is about 30 plus years old. And so it was going to be interesting to take a look at where we are with HIV and AIDS 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just, I have I have a similar story about calling my mom when I was first starting out. Just like, it's so hard. How am I going to get through this?
It's so hard because it looks like it would be fun from a distance. And then you get in there and you don't know how to fix things when you're a newbie writer. You just feel like you're being criticized. You feel like you should be better than you are. You feel you have these actors who are right there and you're letting them down, and it's pretty awful.
It's
so,
like, yeah, it's like you've worked it all out in your head, and then when you go in
right.
5 minutes in, it's not going the way you planned, then
No,
you don't have that muscle yet to be able to think on your feet and really just be present. And
yeah, I mean, I always tell people, especially new writers, I'll say, listen, I had a reading one time at the 3.5 hour mark. I wanted to offer people my kidneys, okay? Because I didn't think they should have had to endure that. So it is difficult as you get more experience. Of course, it's you can see the problems much clearer, and you can fix them more expeditiously,
Right. When we did Pullman Porter Blues, I was here as the associate artistic director, and Jerry Manning was the artistic director, and that was a project that was a commission, and we did every sort of step of the way. And it was really interesting that was a pretty long process in some ways.
5 years.
Maybe too long.
Yeah, it was 5 years getting that project up. Yeah.
And it goes to show that, I mean, there's always lots of things that contribute to why something takes longer than something else, but it is always this, like, developing work is always this sort of mix of, it's like faith and trust and time in terms of the relationship between the theater and the artist and the director. And it's like, you need to have enough time for the playwright to be able to create, and enough support and room for you to do your work. But it can't be so much time and so many iterations that what you're working on turns into kind of a putty.
Exactly.
And how do you, I mean, you work with so many theaters developing work. I imagine every situation is different, and you kind of have to go on that ride and make sure you're asking for what you need. And at the same time, there's only so much you can control, right?
That's definitely true. And I think that as a seasoned writer now, it's a little bit easier because I don't have to ask as much as I used to,
Right.
or now it's sort of offered more. What do you need? When you first start out, oftentimes it's more dictated. This is what we think you ought to do. But as you mature as a writer and get your own voice and your sort of artistic legs under you, you're just much clearer and more trusting of yourself and the story you're trying to tell. And sometimes I think after experience, that's why it's great to have a long-term relationship with the theater, because they have experience with you and they know you're going to deliver, as opposed to somebody that they don't have that type of investment or experience with. However, theaters, it's important to take those chance on writers because, again, someone took a chance on me, and it took me developing over these years to be able to do what I do now. So, but every artistic experience, every play is different. So it's born differently. Some plays come to you in a big rush and you see the beginning, middle, and end. And some you may have the end, but you don't know how to start it. And there's a lot of false starts. And some plays get abandoned along the way because they just can't quite gel, or it's just not the time for them to be born. There's also a certain level of courage that it takes. And so maybe there's a play that you want to write, but you're not ready to sort of parent it into the world yet. Maybe there's some more time that you need to see where it should go. And I think every artist has those plays as well. And so and I feel like your artistic careers and seasons, so that you as an elder right now, you're at that season where I think you're more reflective and you're more apt to say, time is probably shorter going forward. So the things that I really want to write, it's about that time to get to it.
Reminds me of Eugene O'Neill's career and how he spent so many years kind of, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you're doing this, but for him, it was like he avoided writing about his family as long as he possibly could. And he wrote all these other great plays. And then he finally sat down to write Long Day's Journey into Night. And he wanted it locked away, and he didn't want it ever performed in his lifetime because it was just too hard for him to go in there.
Right.
And then you have other playwrights who kind of write that play at the beginning of the year or the beginning of their career. And then they struggle to find their footing after that. But you've had such a prolific career writing about all kinds of different subjects and people and stories. And are there what's the play that you're avoiding to write right now? Is there one? Or is there one that you?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Is there one?
I'm sure it is. I think that writers often write based on certain experiences that they've had, and yet they may be very self-protective or protective of other people that might be impacted by them telling that particular story. So those are all the things that you always weigh when you are a writer. So sometimes time brings about a change where people are much more open for you to tell that particular story, and sometimes not. I think the other thing that's happening, I think, with writers is that we also have to make a living. I, had to raise 2 children. So there are projects that I take on assignment that are income producing, that may not necessarily be an organic play that I'm just itching to write, but I learned to fall in love with it because I'm also on commission or I'm getting paid to do it. So that sometimes can keep you away from your sort of passion projects. It's just trying to survive and make a living doing theater. And with the pandemic, I mean, we're all at that point right now. How are we going to continue to do work that we're passionate about, and be true to our art form, and also work that informs the time we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. We're living through this intensely transformational moment right now, you
Right.
know, with the pandemic and with the racial justice movement making, really big strides towards finally achieving some real equity and justice for Black people, following the murder of George Floyd. And there's just so much change happening right now. And I'm just wondering how this moment is fueling your creativity, because it's like this intense moment that it demands action and response. But at the same time, for me, with the theater dark and no way to produce plays in the kind of traditional way, it seems like for me, like the universe is telling me, hey, it's also time to sort of step back and listen and absorb what's going on, because this is, this isn't a time when we can make theater in the traditional way. Obviously, lots of people are doing stuff online and these hybrid forms of theater, but they're not, it's a different kind of theater. I'll say that.
It's
But
definitely different.
how are you responding? How are you processing this moment that we're in creatively and personally?
Well, initially, it was very hard to get focused and to really feel like I could complete something. I was sort of tethered to CNN, so it was rather difficult. Somehow, I thought if I watched the news long enough, I would be somehow protected, which is a false sense of comfort, because there was no comfort in watching the news. I think that I always remember that Toni Morrison quote, this is not a time where we wring our hands. This is a time artists get busy. And so what was helpful is Launchpad, UC Santa Barbara, Risa Braden runs that program, decided to do these Zoom plays and asked certain writers that had been a part of Launchpad to write a couple pieces that were no longer than 10 minutes. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I could do that. If I could complete one thing, maybe it would unlock. And so I ended up writing 3 pieces. And Shawnee's, that you know well, Shawnee's Omar, did one of the pieces. And after that, it sort of unlocked it for me. I was able to really start to write again. And so it was interesting. It was just just the idea of being able to complete something instead of being in this sort of hazy, I'm not sure what's going to happen next, sort of whirlwind that I was putting myself into. So the act of completing a short play unlocked a sort of sense that it's still in there. And this is the time that we get busy. This is the time where maybe it's a reset for us to get even more creative. Maybe it's a time to complete some of the rewrites that I owe people. And also it's a time to really think about what we're offering to the world right now. How is our art serving to bring more peace, to illuminate some of the issues that are in this country? How are we using our art? And I think at this moment in time, it is a time to reflect on that. And yet we can't just reflect, we also have to create. So that's kind of how I see it right now.
Yeah, that we have to be very purposeful, and at the same time we have to still listen to that voice, that
Right.
it's like, and the playwright is the creative artist in the theater. The rest of us are interpretive artists. We take what you make and we try to give 3 dimensions and try to make it live and breathe, help it live and breathe in the world. But I love this Iris Murdoch quote about art, and she says that art is close, dangerous play with unconscious forces. That and what you're saying about how you don't know what the next play is, you don't know what's going to unlock you. You don't know if, when, or if it will come.
Right.
You have to find ways to sort of pull it out of yourself, even when maybe that's not what you want to do, or there's a reason to resist it. You have to find a way to unlock that. Do you?
Yeah, it's scary because when I can't write, I'm a very moody person. So so writing has always been a way for me to process the world, a way to, because I think writers for I can speak for me, but I think I've heard this from other writers. We walk around and we're absorbing energy, we're absorbing stories, we're absorbing dialogue, we're looking at situations. And then we have to have a way to then put it back into the world with some kind of point of view about it, something that will hopefully make us all feel less alone. So that is our mission as writers, as to create, taking what might be difficult in the world, might be happy in the world, to take it in and then process it in such a way that it's a story that when people come to the theater, they can feel less alone or part of humanity in some way. So when you aren't writing and you just are absorbing, you're just taking that kind of energy in constantly. Because I do think writers tend to be a bit more sensitive because that's what we do. We're always looking at humanity and saying, why is that? I wonder why they felt that. I wonder why they acted in that way. That is what we do. So if there's no way to filter it back out, you're a really moody little something. So,
Yeah.
and my kids will tell you. So yeah, I think.
Yeah. Do you remember when that moment was for you as a young writer, when you started to trust that voice inside of you that demanded to speak to the world? Do you know what that
I
was?
Yeah, I always wrote, but it was like diaries and journals and things that were hidden. Um, and I almost didn't become a writer. It's a kind of a difficult story, but I used to have a journal, and they broke into our house, and they stole my journal, and and then it became sort of public fodder. So for a long time, I said I'll never put anything in writing again, because people can use it to hurt you. Because that is the one place I could tell the truth, or to sort of investigate why there were so many contradictions around me. And when that happened, I thought, oh no, never again. So it took a while to start to trust that. I always wanted to do it, but it's not like I had any examples of other writers around me that I could say, oh, well, they did it, so it's a possibility for me. Um, so I went into another field entirely. And at one point, I said, okay, this is my dream. I went to journalism school, um, got an advanced degree in journalism, and I didn't want to do that. Newspapers were recruiting me because at that point they were trying to get more Black journalists. And I said, oh, I don't really want to do that because I want to write fiction because you don't have to hurt people. And I felt like in journalism, sometimes you have to make those choices and they hurt people. So I gave myself 5 years. I said, I'm going to try and become a writer. And I'm going to take 5 years to see if I can do it and support myself. And in 4 years, I was able to do it, and I never looked back.
And what was that? What was that play?
My first play was Before It Hits Home.
Before It Hits Home, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and it won the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize at the same year. August Wilson was the judge, one of the judges. So
Wow.
I always thank him for that because that really also put me on the map. So yeah, and
Yeah.
I was the first African American woman to win that prize.
Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, when you came up in the field, there were so few Black female playwrights because there were so few opportunities for
exactly.
white men, and that's starting to shift now. But you've gone through a long, fought so hard for a place in this field, and you've been a real trailblazer for so many writers who've come up now. Are there, what do you, when you look around the field now, are there things that give you hope, or what do you see?
Oh, yeah, there's so many Black women who are writing now and telling all kinds of stories and getting produced. When you're right, when I was coming up, we were one a season, and then some places were still one a season. um,
That's the conversation now.
yeah, and then it was sort of like, for example, before it hits home, I remember when I wrote that, and Tazwell came out to the group and saw it and went back to Arena, and Zelda Chandler ran the Arena at that point, and she asked him what he wanted to do, and he said, "I want to direct this show before it hits home." And there were very many people on staff that said, "We could never do a play like that with that kind of language. People will walk out. It is not a play for," oh my goodness, it was pretty awful trying to get that play up. I mean, I've had people in the pulpit say they're going to organize boycotts. I've had people accuse me of being somebody, being the front for a white writer who probably wrote that. You have to think of the times too, because there were people who thought you shouldn't use AIDS and Black in the same sentence. So that was a very hurtful and difficult time. The second year, Toswell asked again. He said, "I want to do Before It Hits Home." And Zelda said, "Okay." And that took a lot of courage, because there were many people on that staff who did not think that that was appropriate. And it garnered a lot of attention, because the right before we opened, Magic Johnson announced that he was HIV positive. And that changed the entire conversation for the play. And people came and wanted to talk about it, and ask questions. And um, so, yeah, it was, I started that play. I was in Jamaica for a year. I'd gotten a Rotary Fellowship, and every week we would get the paper, and it would say, this plague in America is just killing gay white males. And I remember thinking to myself then, I said, if that ever gets in the Black community, will we be ready? And that's why the title, Before It Hits Home. And then it became one of the leading causes of death for Black women. So, and in some ways, the resistance and the disparity in care and people access to services is getting mirrored again with COVID.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's real echoes of all of that right now.
Exactly, exactly. So, sometimes we feel like we've made changes, and yet so many things remain the same.
Right. I mean, this time is exposing so many of the systemic inequities all over,
Right.
throughout our society, and in every different area. And so it's interesting how theater can interact with that right now, and how
Yeah.
plays like, the play that you wrote those years ago can resonate in a completely new way right now.
Yeah, that's why I was so excited that the Billie
Yeah.
Holiday was doing it, because I thought, boy, that's really interesting, and how people will respond to it now 30 years later.
Right.
So, yeah.
You also write plays for young people, for young adult audiences, and you've worked a lot with Minneapolis Children's Theater and Seattle Children's Theater, two of the leading children's theater companies in the country. How did
And
you
Chicago,
Chicago, right?
Children.
Chicago
Yeah,
Children's.
because I'm
Uh,
from Chicago.
right,
That's
right.
right.
And how did you come into that? Was that when you became a mom, or was that interest there before, or was it through commissions?
Um, Mostly after I became a mom, I had one child who was struggling somewhat in school, and they went to a small school here in the central area, and didn't have any kind of theater or anything like that. And I knew I had to get more involved in the school, and what I had to offer was drama. So the first year, I wrote a little play for first grade, and we put it on for Grandparents' Day, and it became 8 years later, I was doing the play every year. And when the kids when the kids would see me come in with a laundry basket of costumes, they're like, it's time for our play. So every year I would do a play in one of my daughter's classes. So I would write the play, come in and direct it for 3 weeks with all these kids, make sure every kid had a speaking part so their parents and grandparents could see them speak, and go to Goodwill and get costumes because that's all it was about for most of the kids was having a costume. But it's interesting, a lot of those kids, their parents still tell me today that it taught them how to have voice, how to get up in front of people, how to do public speaking, and just it is amazing what theater can do if we start them young and exposing them to sort of universal truths, how to be a part of a community, how to follow directions, how to make eye contact, how to speak in front of people. So both of my daughters have benefited from that. I thought they love theater to go into it. They were like, absolutely not, Mom. They're like, it's too hard. But but what it helps to me with kids is finding your voice, finding your power. And each kid, I feel like that I've taught over the years, because then I did it 2 years at another school in Seward Park. I would see kids years later who are like, Miss West, I'm talking in class now or something like that. And it was a very fulfilling thing. I loved it. And it really helped my daughter that was having some difficulty sort of get more connected in her community. So I'm really glad. And it was my way of sort of giving back because it was all volunteer. And so yeah, I it's hard because I usually did the school I worked at. After that, I did 5th grade. Woo.
Wow.
So, but again, for a lot of these kids, they have never experienced theater that they could do it. And I would make some of them would be assistant stage managers, some of them would be help with the costumes, and just to teach them the sort of basics of putting on a play. And then after that, I think Seattle Children's Theater, Lynn Hartzell commissioned me to write something. Oh, Addie American Girl. I did that play. And then I started getting commissions from children's theaters. And I love, right now, I'm considering 2 books to adapt. I love doing TYA work, theaters for young audiences, because it's a different skill set. I can sort of, show off a little bit with a monologue, and the adult theater kids are like, next, get on with it, lady.
they're very honest audiences. They just
exactly
know right away if you've got them or not.
Right. And so I think the skill set for each of the audiences has helped me become a better writer, because adults, it's just different. But with kids, I have to really be about more plot and sort of that fun element, that sort of levity. But also you have to not lose the parents as well. So I always am usually doing one sort of TYA project at the same time I'm doing, probably 5 or 6 adult projects.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's nice to have that balance in your work, I bet.
Yeah, very few playwrights do. Most playwrights, Chicago's artistic director was saying this to me the other day, is that most people that write TYA only write TYA. Very few crossover. There are some, but it's few.
We just have a few minutes left, but can you talk a little bit? I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Fannie, because this is a co-commission between the Goodman Theater in Chicago and Seattle Rep, and we're going to do it at some point when we can get back on our stage. But yeah, I just love this piece and got to see a workshop of it out of the Goodman last fall. Was it last fall or winter? I can't remember. Time is so weird now.
October, because I was in between.
That's right.
How could you forget this? I was doing Shout,
right.
Sister Shout.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, Cheryl, I don't want you going
That's
away
right.
while you're in rehearsal with Shout Sister Shout. And
That's right.
that was a really balancing act for me to fly to Chicago, do a week, and get back here and be in rehearssil for Shout Sister Shout. You were not happy.
I know. I was being very selfish. I was like, you have to be here on my
Yes,
show. You did go to
yes,
Chicago, but
yes,
yeah, I think I flew to Chicago on a Sunday night, saw the reading Monday, and then we both came back. And we both did that, and we both came back
yes,
today or
yes.
something like that. It was a
Which,
wonderful reading.
I have to thank you again for Shout Sister Shout, because that was a huge undertaking for Seattle Rep. And I love that cast. And I really had such a wonderful time. It was one of my best experiences in the theater, uh, because I felt very supported. And shout out to them, because I know some of them are listening today. But that Shout cast was, they were just wonderful. So I just have to say that.
Yeah,
Okay, Fannie.
it was so wonderful. It was pure joy, that show.
Yes,
Every night.
yeah,
It was
yeah. So
everybody. Yeah.
we're working on it now on Zoom, also, because we're getting ourselves ready for our next leg of it, and very excited. Fannie Lou Hamer, for those that don't know, was a very big civil rights activist, mostly in the 60s. Did not learn that she had a right to vote until she was 44 years old. And for the next 12 years, she fought tirelessly to get voting rights for people in Mississippi. Um, she was one of the most incredible folk heroes that America has ever produced. Um, she never stopped, never stopped thinking, what could she do for her neighbor? She had a sixth grade education, had been a sharecropper, lived most of her life on plantations, but said, we have to earn the right to vote. That is our right. It is our constitutional right. And what can I do? Which is incredible for somebody in those times when you knew you could be, your house dynamited, you could be shot and killed, lynched, just for going to register to vote. And she was, somebody tried to kill her. She was assaulted. She was beat in a jail almost to the end of her life, but that woman never stopped. She was a supervisor for Freedom Summer, when um, uh, in '64, when a lot of college kids were recruited to go to the South, particularly Mississippi, and help with voter registration. And she was one of the supervisors. Now, this is a woman with a sixth grade education who was able to marshal all these people and to work alongside of people that had PhDs and lawyers and whatever, and still felt that she had a right to be there, had a right to tell people, we have to get out and vote, and I'm going to be out there with you and helping you register to vote. She, her campaign manager, because she also ran for Congress 3 times, sixth grade education, but this woman was fearless. Um, so her campaign manager, Charles McLaren, is still alive, and I got to talk to him recently, and he just filled me in on so much else that I knew some of it, but he sort of enlightened me. So there are people I like to do these unsung hero stories because they help me with my own courage journey. Um, Rosetta was one of those people, and Fannie Lou Hamer's another one, because how could we do any less when people have been jailed, beaten, houses blown up, uh, just to get us the right to vote? And then people are saying now, well, what does it matter? Of course it matters. And it's on the backs of those people. And for her to have been a woman during those times, getting out there and taking the darts with the men, it's an incredible story. So I have crafted this play that I then went to the Good Men and You and said, hey, I really want to do this. And you all co-commissioned it. And now we've got some interest in other places. And so we're hopefully gearing up. No one knows right now with the pandemic, but I'm very proud of it and excited that the Goodman, Ife Butler, will star in it. And she actually did the workshop, as you know, and just an incredible singer, actress, and what she can do with this piece is just amazing. And I wasn't sure was gonna work because it's a rally, and it's a different kind of style and form. But Ife, she made it work, and so we're very excited.
Yeah, it was thrilling to be in that room because what you've done is you've created the audience becomes the activists at the rally in a way.
Yes,
And
yes,
she activates that room, and she's both in our time and that time at the same time.
right,
And
right, yeah.
so
And I
it
should mention Henry Gooden is directing it. Yeah.
so
So the,
yeah, you feel like you're both learning about something in a way like Sister Rosetta. For some of us who, like, I didn't know who Sister Rosetta was, even though she was such an influential figure in rock and roll, and how inspiring she was. I mean, I had heard of Fannie Lou Hamer, of course, but like, this gives her, I think what this play gives her is the position that she deserves within the movement, that you see just how courageous she was, and how yeah, how inspiring her story is, and how much we owe her
right.
for what she's done. So it's such a great piece, and especially for right now.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm working on it, I'm always like, I talk to her. I feel like, wow, thank you for inspiring me, because I mean, this is a difficult time in the country right now, and we need that inspiration from our people that have come before us, because they paved the way, but they also left us wisdom. Their wisdom they left for us. So as we are out there protesting now, we can draw on what they have already learned and pave the way for us. So I am very excited by this piece, and the theaters that have indicated interest are very excited. And of course, you all at the Goodman are, ready to get going. I just looked at the some of the copy for the show from the Goodman. So we'll see if anything, how it's all going to work out. But we're very excited.
Well, you're an inspiration to all of us, Cheryl. So thank you for all you do
Thank
for our
you.
community, and for for all the artistry that you bring to the world. It's inspiring. And thanks for spending the evening with us. And I want to thank all of you out there for listening in with me and Cheryl tonight, and coming together, even if it has to be virtually, to share these meaningful conversations around the art and the artists on our stage. If you are able, we would invite you to consider making a gift to Seattle Rep today, so that we can continue to connect to our community and share our creativity and continue to put theater at the heart of public life. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon for another creative conversation. And we'll see you soon. Good night.